Well, here's another secondary verifier of things I've been showing on my channel for quite some time now. Ancient DNA reveals Irish are not Celts. Irish ancestors came from biblical land, scientists say. People in Ireland have now more reason than ever to wonder where their ancestors came from. Ancient DNA reveals Irish are not Celts, and it's very possible ancestors of the Irish people came from the biblical lands of the Middle East. The Celts are mysterious people who played a very important role in the history of ancient Europe. It has long been assumed that Irish people were closely related to Celts, but this theory could be wrong. Here we see an Irish countryside in a stele statue type and DNA that goes along with it. In 2006, Bertie Curie was clearing land to make a driveway for McQuaig's Bar on Rathlin Island off Antrim, where he noticed a large flat stone buried beneath the surface. So Curie realized that there was a large gap underneath the stone and investigated it further. What Curie discovered could completely rewrite history of ancient Ireland. I shot a torch in and I saw the gentleman, well, his skull and bones, Curie told the Washington Post. He eventually found the remains of 3 humans and immediately called the police. The remains of these ancient people have now been studied by scientists in Ireland and Britain who say DNA results show the ancestors of modern Irish people and predate the Celts' arrival on the Irish shores by around 1,000 years. Essentially, Irish DNA existed in Ireland before the Celts ever set foot on the island, strangely showing you a reality of the way things broke down. Radiocarbon dating at Curie's McQuaig's Bar found that the ancient bones date back to at least 2000 BC. I believe the number is 2350, which is hundreds of years older than the oldest known Celtic artifacts anywhere in the world, Irish Central reports. The proceedings of the National Academy of Science said that the bones were strikingly resembling those of contemporary Irish, Scottish, and Welsh people. The DNA evidence based on those bones completely upends the traditional view, said Barry Cunliffe, an emeritus professor of archaeology at Oxford. This means the discovery could completely change the perception of Irish ancestry. Radiocarbon dating at Curie McQuaig's Bar found that the ancient bones date back to at least 2000 BC. Again, I believe the number is 2350, which is hundreds of years older than the oldest known Celtic artifact anywhere in the world. Here we're looking at McQuaig's Bar, where he was going to build that concrete driveway through here. And when he tried to move some of the bigger stones that were embedded in the ground so he could get a good base for it, he found that one stone and lifted it up, and when he did, there was a hollow under there that contained the bodies of 3 people. Quite amazing. Dan Bradley, a geneticist professor at Trinity College, said in 2016 that the discovery could challenge the popular belief that Irish people are related to Celts. The genome of contemporary people in Ireland are older, much older than we previously thought, he said. Perhaps people in Ireland and Scotland more related to people in Africa than we think. A previously shown study suggested that the Scots are descendants of long-lost tribes from the Sahara. Yeah, if you look into this, it'll show you that they have a large connection or in their genetics to the ancient Berbers and Amazigh that are the Caucasian endemic North Africans that have a huge component of blonde and red hair. In fact, they have the largest component other than in Ireland and Scotland in the world. So people made connections a long time ago, but this is where genetics shows you something. And in the other papers, they have this statement or belief that what they had done is migrated and that it had come from North Africa and they migrated up the coast past Spain and so on. You can still see people called Huetos and so on in Spain, but Spain has its own thing that happened much later with Islam. They really didn't impinge upon the rest of northern or northwestern Europe. So what's odd about that, or telling about it, is that it's showing a Berber type of DNA. And so there's been papers that said that this was Egyptian DNA, and other people are saying that it's North African Berber, and even people that used to be in the Sahara back whenever it was green. Quite odd, huh? Well, if you look into it deeper, Ramses the Great was a redhead, and his genetics are showing up that he was also an endemic Caucasian Berber of North Africa, and that same type of person. And if you look at that dynasty and come back through the 18th dynasty there, you'll find that there's King Tut that everybody knows about, and Akenaten. Strangely, there's a tale of Akenaten's daughter, after all of that went down, that she left, perhaps with a bunch of Phoenicians, which also show a connection genetically to these Irish people. But she left with them and apparently made a trek that went through the Pillars of Hercules, out and took a right, went up to Spain and then on to Scotland and Ireland. Involved a big storm and a shipwreck, and you know how those seas can get up there, but her name or nickname was Scottia, and it means little flower. It's where we get the idea of Scotland from, and she was the very first Mary Queen of Scots. Not the red-headed lady that you think about, but way back, and being the very first one. Apparently predating the Celts in the area too. For if you go back a few thousand years under that, right there on the edge of it was the continental ice shelf that ended up melting away, and we've talked about Doggerland and things that go along with it. So their genetics are much older than they thought, they said. Perhaps people in Ireland and Scotland are more related to people in Africa than we think, and that studies show that Scots are descendants of lost tribes from the Saharas. And I think that's the end of it right here. But isn't that amazing? Genetics shows you things that really people may have some type of mythologies or folklore for that gets dismissed a lot of times. And then whenever you get into genetics, it ends up being something that you cannot deny, that something had really happened. You look at the Scottish Declaration of Independence, as it's known, and they also tell you that they came from the Holy Lands in the ancient time. And so there's been many connections, and this, I guess, is really just a verifier on that. Let me know what you think downstairs. Like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy. Peace.